Okay, so today we'll be looking at IELTS academic writing, task 1. Okay, so let's get started. Alright, so when looking at IELTS, we're talking about the academic writing, okay? So when we're looking at task 1, in this part of the test, you might be given one or more graphs and or charts, and you have to describe them, okay? You have to explain the information, you might have to explain, describe them, you might have to compare and contrast different graphs, different information, all right? And it should be done in around 150 words. It's advised that you should spend 20 minutes in this task, and you need to take into consideration that there are less marks in this task than in task 2. So use your time wisely. You remember you have 60 minutes to do both tasks in the written paper. So use your time wisely and have a look at it. So some of the tips that to analyze charts, okay? You need to try to see the most important information, okay? You don't have to describe every detail of the information given. Just choose the most important information, and that information is going to be related to the question, all right? So if the question asks you to describe the graph, you're going to describe the graph. Don't have to compare. Whereas if you have to compare, take a special care of differences, similarities, and compare those, okay? Give like a brief introduction. Well, this graph shows percentages of sales, well, and we have to and then start to compare them. Really pay attention to the question. Remember that answering the question is the most important thing. So you use the information you're given and then answer the question, okay? Try to support your description with figures. You don't need to give exact numbers, so if it's 98.5, just say almost all, so 98.5%, for example. Well, almost all sales have to do with whatever it is that you have to describe, okay? And unfortunately, sometimes you're given something like this, okay? This is what we call a diagram, all right, where they tend to show you a certain process, okay? And you have to follow the process and describe, okay? And in this case, as you can see, it looks a bit messy, but we'll be looking at it shortly. So really, the first thing you should do when you have to describe one of these diagrams is to identify the stages clearly before writing about it. All right? So let's have a look at the stages. All right, you can see we've got different parties, we've got different stages, we've got different arrows going backwards and forwards. Luckily for us, we've got also numbering, so that in this case I chose this particular example because it does look messy, all right? But if you sit down and analyze it together, we'll have a look at it, and it's not really as hard as it looks. So let's find out the following information. We have here 5 parties involved, so let's identify them. The first one is the consumer, the second party is a credit card organization, the third is the consumer's issuing bank, then we have the merchant's bank, and finally the merchant. Okay, so this is we have 5 different parties involved in the process of payment by credit card. How many stages? Once again, they're numbered. So the first stage, we have payment by credit card, okay? Then the authorization is requested, and the authorization is requested, of course, and the authorization given. So then the product is sent to the consumer. In the meantime, the payment of the transaction fees goes through the credit card organization, and then the consumer's issuing bank transfers the funds to the merchant's bank to the merchant. Okay, so we've got here, and we've got 7 processes, right? And we can see that something peculiar about this is that we've got arrows going in both directions. So what does this mean? That between consumer and merchant, there is a give and take, okay? This simultaneous activity between the two, okay? The authorization requested and given, it's also done, all right? We've got the credit card organization, that it's not just a process of here, no, it's, okay, consumer, merchant, back to the consumer. In the meantime, we've got the merchant, the credit card organization, the credit card, the bank back to the credit card, okay, where the credit card organization gives the authorization and then the payment one returns and goes this way, okay? So the first three steps, if, as you can see, first four, sorry, tend to be a give and take situation, okay? So the basic description is the customer receives his goods, okay? It's really the diagram showing the relationship between the customer and the merchant and all the steps that come in between. So the customer receives his good from one point and the merchant gets his money from the other point. Okay? So once we understood how to link, because that really would come in the body, we need to think about the introduction and the conclusion. In the introduction, common sense once again. Ask yourself, what happens as a result of this process? Okay? As a result of this process, the two main parties get their products. The merchant the money, the customer its product. Is there any change involved? Okay? How many stages are there in this process? And is there one simple process or are there variations within the process? Okay? You will not normally need both an extended introduction and conclusion. Okay, so remember it's 150 words, so maybe 2-3 sentences max for introduction and conclusion. Okay, because of the word limit. All right, remember that we are specifically trying to attack. We're coming towards. We're facing the problem of this exam. We're facing task one. Task one is 150 words, so don't go overboard with the introduction and conclusion. Remember, you have to do task 2 at the same time. Okay? So really, what have you got to do with this now is, next step is, of course, to get writing. Okay? So try to download the PDF file that you got in the link. Okay? And then, so you can have a look at the diagram, and I want you to write that. Okay? Thinking of task 1, and I want you to describe, okay, this diagram and the process that goes on between the merchant and the customer. Okay, all of this information that I've got here in this presentation was adapted from this website. It's got different processes, diagrams. You can have a look at more step-by-step guides. It's actually quite good. It's free, so have a look at it, and I'll see you next time.